he's murdered her.
I just love you, darling.
They were in a car park having sex.
The whole neighbourhood knew.
I trusted her so much. He just pumped that gun and was going to shoot me again.
Hello, I'm Leila McKinnon and this is Inside Crime. Tonight we look at lethal lovers, where Till Death Do Us Part becomes a chilling reminder that all is not as it seems. One story is of a loving husband torn between his extended family and his new wife, resulting in a frenzied attack that no one saw coming. But now, the amazing story of survival of farmer Joe Ricks, gunned down in the night by his wife's lover, an act that's left lifelong scars. Joe Ricks is a down-to-earth, no-nonsense sort of bloke, country-born and bred.
I was always going to be a farmer. I love the open spaces. Oh, the animals, love stock. We had a lot of happy times, we did. No, it wouldn't change a thing.
Joe fell in love with Andrea while they were working together at a local store.
I found Andrea very attractive. She was fun, so sort of country-minded girl, jeans and boots. And I guess that's what was the attraction, yeah.
They married in 1997.
It was a great wedding. It was a lovely wedding, yeah. Not over the top, just suited me down to the ground. I'm not too flash. She looked lovely on the day, I guess, yeah. Yeah, she did.
Their life together blossomed. Over the next 10 years, Joe and Andrea had 3 children: Jesse, Doc and Jack.
I thought we were going to be there, married forever, yeah, and everyone was going to be together.
What Joe didn't realise was Andrea's hiding a secret life.
She was bored, lived on the farm. She wanted a better lifestyle. She had very expensive clothes in her house and had accumulated a lot of debt, which Joe didn't know about. She was like a Jekyll and Hyde. Who she was not who she was.
While Joe looked after the farm and cared for the kids, Andrea went to work. In December 2006, she began an affair with a colleague, Terry Seeley.
So Terry was a person who saw Andrea as an angel, I suppose you could say. I think he called her his princess at the time, and she liked being called princess too, and he was just a means to her end, I believe.
And that end was money. Andrea wanted her husband's farm and his life insurance, and she convinces her gullible lover, Terry, to take part in her deadly plot.
She painted a picture of Joe being a person who was violent. I think she'd even feigned injuries whereby she'd been out of the working on the farm and sustained a bruise to her body somewhere, like working with the sheep and doing things. She'd see Terry and say, "Look what Joe done me." She made him believe that if he didn't actually shoot Joe and kill him, that he'd wake up one morning to find out that Joe had killed her.
The conniving Andrea has set her trap. Now she begins plotting Joe's murder, and in a bizarre twist, even steals her husband's own shotgun to carry out the killing. It's a dark, still autumn night, and as Joe arrives back at the farmhouse, Terry Seeley is waiting.
I could feel pain, a burning pain. I knew that something wasn't right inside my stomach. There was a lot of blood coming from my right side, and I knew that wasn't right. I then I looked up and I seen a shadow of a figure coming out from behind a tree. I was yelling, I said, "What are you doing?" He just pumped that gun, was going to shoot me again. I would have rather if he'd spoke. Probably told me something, but he didn't. No, he was just there to kill me.
Joe's all alone. His wife and kids aren't home. There's nobody to help.
He pointed the gun towards me and I started footing it that way. That's when the second shot, when he hit me. Yep.
And that's when he shot me in the back. It just felt like 100 wasps just hitting in the back all at once. And I kept running.
He's fired 2 rounds at Joe, but Terry Seeley has 23 cartridges left. Joe made it across the road and climbed over a barbed wire fence into his neighbour's paddock, but help was still 3 kilometres away.
Hit me in the back of the head, but it didn't penetrate the skin. So that was that gave me a bit of hope that I was making some distance between us. I just kept going best I could.
Then a glimmer of hope in the distance, lights from his neighbour's farmhouse.
It was dark everywhere, but if I could just keep going and try and get some cover somewhere.
Almost an hour after he was ambushed, Joe reaches his neighbour's house in excruciating pain.
I'll always remember the look on their children's faces. Without them seeing blood or injuries, the terror on my face would have been enough for them to know that something was dreadfully wrong.
As ambulance officers tried to stem the massive loss of blood, Andrea arrives.
She was crying and trying to touch me and trying to grasp hold of me to cuddle me.
Against the odds, Joe's survived. His wounds are shocking and he's in an induced coma.
They took half my bowel out and anything I didn't eat on the right side, and then they replumbed it all back up, apparently, and stapled me back together. My hand was a bit of a mystery for a while. It was badly broken.
Joe's wife, Andrea, is by his bedside day and night. After a week, Joe emerges from the coma.
It was comforting to have her there. She was affectionate and she'd hold my hand and touch me and tell me everything was going to be all right.
While Andrea Ricks was playing the loving wife, police already suspected her involvement in the shooting of her husband, and they interviewed Joe at the first opportunity.
I only just got conscious yesterday. Became conscious yesterday. I've been in the coma.
Are you able to give us any reason about what has occurred?
No. No.
You have any idea?
No.
Nothing, no suspicions?
No, I don't. I didn't think I had any enemies. No.
Yeah.
But what Joe didn't know was that his wife was his biggest enemy.
She was just very casual about it and very relaxed. And when you're looking as an investigator, looking for a reason, it just didn't sit right.
Soon, Detective Sergeant Steve Howard and his team learn about Andrea's affair with Terry Seeley.
Most people out there knew that Andrea Ricks and Terry Seeley had them having an affair. And there'd been a bit of a jibe going on that Terry's mistress her husband had been shot, and they were joking if Terry had done that.
Then a red-hot lead, a damning piece of evidence in the back of Terry Seeley's work ute. A shotgun cartridge identical to the 3 spent shells found at the crime scene.
Here we have Terry Seeley. He found a cartridge in the actual vehicle, and he was supposedly a lover of Andrea Ricks.
Then another breakthrough. The scheming couple overheard talking about the gun used in the shooting.
Andrea asked Terry, "Where is it? What did you do with it?" He reassured her that they'll never find it.
Detectives searched Terry Seeley's house for more evidence. In just a week of meticulous and determined police work, they've cracked the case. They charge him with the cold-blooded shooting of Joe Ricks.
I'm with Terry Seeley at the Parks Police Station. Are you going to Terry Seeley? Yeah. Okay. Terry, I'd just like to inform you that you are currently under arrest in the conspiracy to murder of Joe Ricks at a voting gate on the 1st of May 2007.
What follows is a full confession. Terry spills the beans on Andrea and her scheme to kill Joe.
Where was he when you discharged the first round?
Terry is taken back to the crime scene and gives a blow-by-blow description of the night. He tells police everything.
Okay, was he running or was he limping or how was he getting?
Down to a tree, I just don't know which one now I'm looking at.
Seeley also directs police divers to where he dumped the shotgun.
Okay, so sort of butt first, or barrel first out of the water. I'm sure he was relieved to tell his side of the story. His family and friends who he spoke to had said they'd known him all his life. He'd never been involved in a fight, and he never fired a shotgun until this night. And here he was, shooting a person and lying and trying to create alibis. It was a total alien world to what he was used to.
Andrea is completely unaware Terry's been arrested when she's summoned by police for an interview.
Yep, she gave me a kiss and touched my arm and hand and said she'll be back. Won't take long, I'll be back before you know it.
But Andrea never came back. 8 days after the shooting, 8 days after she began her bedside charade, Andrea Ricks is arrested and charged. Andrea Ricks is now under arrest for planning the murder of her husband, Joe.
Just to let you know that you're under arrest in relation to conspiracy to murder against Joe that happened on the 1st of May 2007.
You understand conspiracy?
Not really, I'm a bit frightened by the whole thing.
Andrea, I would say, you're one of the most cold-hearted people I've ever met in my life. There's no remorse towards Joe. The only remorse was that they hadn't succeeded in killing him.
He's been totally oblivious to his wife's secret all along. Now Joe Ricks finally learns of her murderous plot.
Everything just changed. I had to stop. I just had to stop loving somebody just like that. I lay there for hours, lay there for nights, just thinking about how she put on a good show. It made me question everything, not just from when I was shot, from prior to that, to my marriage, to what was real and what wasn't real.
Terry Seeley's confession has sealed the fate of his lover, Andrea Ricks. The police evidence is overwhelming, but that doesn't make the trial any easier for Joe.
I made eye contact a couple of times. She was cranky. She was angry inside.
In the end, Andrea's sentenced to 8 years jail, Terry Seeley to 5.5 years.
They tell me he was led round by his manhood. I would have preferred it if she went for a model or something. It might have seemed half worthwhile.
What questions would you like to have been able to ask Andrea?
Initially, I'd like to ask her why she would do it to me, to start with, why she would feel that she'd do it to our children, and whether it was worth it. Now, was it worth it?
Joe Ricks is no quitter, and despite what he's endured, he's doing his best to move on. But his painful, enduring injuries make it difficult.
I've got a lot of lead in my body. My lead level is very high, and we have to monitor that. That's the zipper down the front.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And you can see the scarring.
But it's those other scars, the emotional scars, that Joe's finding just as hard to live with.
It sounds weird. I missed Andrea when I first come home. She wasn't there. She was part of my normal life, my marriage, and she wasn't there. I was upset. I'd get depressed. But at the end of the day, I had these 3 children. There was nothing I could do about her, but there was something I could do with them. I could look after them and we could get by. We could get through this.
And those children have been a lifesaver for Joe as he's struggled with depression.
Ready, what?
Joe's eldest son, Jack, was only 9 at the time of the shooting. Now 16, he's been a tower of strength for his dad.
I don't think many of us have a relationship like me and Dad. Like, others, it's sort of just a father and son thing, but yeah, this is like my best mates, so yeah.
For our next story, sadly, there was no survival. Savagely attacked out of the blue by her controlling husband, who was being pulled between 2 worlds. A young woman, loving her life as a first-time mum, stabbed to death at home. Killed by the man she loved.
I just love you, darling. This is all just meant to be.
He was a big talking salesman who sold her the dream.
I can't wait to start a family together.
Winter 2005 at Victoria's Dandenongs, where Karine and Demetrius Securus chose to marry.
I invite you to share my life as my wife.
But that life would be short-lived. Karine was a bright, beautiful woman whose dream was to get married and raise a family. Demetrius was an ambitious, charismatic salesman with strong family ties. In 2.5 short years, that dream turned into a nightmare when this groom viciously bashed and murdered the woman he promised to love.
I'm looking forward to spending all of my time with you and having babies and having raising a family and seeing them grow up and us grow old together.
Nothing was amiss at the wedding.
You absolutely, absolutely mean the world to me.
Or was it? In his speech, Demetrios said he loved his wife and was very happy.
I love you very, very much. And I'm very happy.
But the emotion and passion were reserved for his parents.
The 2 most beautiful people in the world are on that table there, and they are just wonderful.
The most beautiful people in the world, not his bride, his parents.
Long life and many children.
I just love you, darling. This is all just meant to be.
Karine Securus grew up in Perth in the 70s and 80s.
She was extremely capable, very creative, very intelligent, and I reckon that might have been threatening to some people.
She was just a really good listener and very caring.
Barbara Reid met Karine when Karine moved to Melbourne, and the two became great friends.
She really, really wanted a family. She wanted to be married and she wanted to have a family.
And it seemed that Demetrius Securus was looking for the same things when he met Karine at a work Christmas party in 2003.
She was pretty well swept off her feet. Met this guy and, he really likes me, and it was all pretty full on.
Within months, Karine took her new man to Perth to meet her family.
Oh, I thought he was marvellous. Yes, yes. Well, I thought he was very thoughtful and considerate, and it looked as if he loved her.
But not everyone fell for Demetrius's charm. Barbara found his smooth-talking ways a bit too well-rehearsed.
Almost like a used car salesman, I suppose, used your name 20 times in a sentence, He monopolised all her time with him and his family. There was just something not quite right.
But Karine was chasing her storybook ending.
We will be loyal and honest and comfort her for the rest of your life.
I will.
Now husband and wife.
The wedding was everything they hoped for, surrounded by people they loved, who loved them. It couldn't have been better.
That was easy.
Karine could never have imagined that the rest of her life would be less than 3 years.
So baby, let's go and travel the world, come back, have a family, and just keep on going. Love you lots.
When she came back from her honeymoon, I've noticed a visible shift in her as a person. I think she just started to feel more and more pressure from the from his family wanting to be in their pocket all the time, and she wasn't liking that.
In the Securus household, Demetrius was the shining star, and there was pressure on him to always be available to his extended family. Karine knew how tight-knit the family were, but she and Demetrios had openly discussed their future plans. Karine wanted to raise her family in Perth, where she grew up.
There was never any secret about that, so when she got pregnant, that's where they went. They went straight back to Perth. And he told me this himself. He said his family was struggling without him being here in Melbourne. His mother was distraught by it. He was putting pressure on Karine to come back to Melbourne, and that was never the deal.
Demetrius was beginning to crack under the pressure from his family to stay close to the nest, and the emotional tug and pleading by his family to stay in Melbourne was making him anxious and depressed.
In enmeshed families, no one is an individual. The family is the unit, the main unit. And they all work very well together, but if one decides or needs to leave, then the system comes together to pull that person back in. That's why it's enmeshed.
Karine and Demetrios made no secret of their desire to start a family, and their precious daughter Lara was born just 1 year after they were married. While Demetrios was a doting father, he wasn't prepared to see so much of his wife's love and attention lavished on their adorable baby girl. Lara's birth was the beginning of the end.
She asked me if I'd noticed any difference in Demetrios since she'd had Lara. I always think, what would have happened if I'd put my arms around her and said, well, darling, you know, I've noticed that things are not too good. How about you and Lara come and stay with us for a while?
I think he felt very jealous of her time being monopolised by Lara. He'd come home all the time. She felt very strangled, almost like he was checking up on her every day, and she was clearly unhappy, very unhappy. I said to her, you know, I think you need to fasten your seatbelt. I think you're in for a fairly rough ride.
10 days later, Karine was dead. Karine was murdered in a brutal and sustained attack at home. Her husband took his time killing her. First, he hit her so hard that it knocked out her 4 front teeth, and then he stabbed her 18 times. After the horrific act, Demetrius phoned Karine's brother.
He called Lane and said, come and get Lara, I've skitzed out.
Lane found his brother-in-law outside with a knife in his hand, covered in Karine's blood. He looked dazed and confused and said, I murdered your sister. Ambulance and police were soon on the scene. Demetrius was taken to Fremantle Hospital before being transferred to the Franklin Centre, the maximum security psychiatric facility at Greylands Hospital. Barbara had left a couple of messages for Karine to call her. So when she received a call from one of Karine's Perth friends, she knew something must have happened.
I said to her, oh, don't tell me that Demetrius has committed suicide. And she said, no, it's worse. And I said, what? She said, he's murdered her. And I just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. It was just, yeah, shocking.
Karine Securus was brutally murdered by her husband Demetrios in an unprovoked attack. During his trial, psychiatric reports were produced saying Demetrius had been suffering a severe depressive illness at the time of the murder, but had since fully recovered.
He says he went to bed at night and woke up beside her body, all bloodied. He says he doesn't remember. I don't believe him.
I can't help the image of her last moments passing through my mind.
June believes Demetrius's depression masked another condition.
I mean, people suffer depression and anxiety, but they don't go out and have the capacity to actually, just having the ability to put a knife into another body, to most of us is just abhorrent.
But incredibly, almost unbelievably, not only does June claim to have an understanding of her daughter's killer, she also forgives him.
What he did is not only not okay, it's absolutely horrific and almost unforgivable. But I have to forgive, if you like, in order that he doesn't control me, because if I lived with any ill feeling, any negative emotions involving him, he would still be running my life. And I'm determined that's not going to happen.
Demetrius Securus was convicted of murder. He's serving a life sentence with a non-parole period of 12 years. He had it all: the wife, the life, and the good times. But what Chris Soteriou didn't have was a faithful partner. His adoring wife, Vicky, was leading a double life, having a passionate affair with the hitman who would attempt to take Chris's life in a laneway on his birthday. From the day they wed, Chris Soteriou and his wife, Vicky, seemed the perfect match. For 16 years, they enjoyed an apparently loving partnership.
I do remember the day as if it was yesterday. It was the happiest day of my life. Every day she used to tell me she loves me and till death do us apart.
Little did he know it, but that solemn wedding vow, till death do us part, would very nearly become a chilling epitaph for Chris Soteriou.
How would you describe Vicky's relationship with Ari?
It was extremely obsessive. They had tattoos on each other's body representing their love for each other. They were in constant phone contact with each other. There were numerous text messages, love letters. It was full on.
Ari Dimitrakis and Vicky Soteriou were old lovers, but had rekindled their relationship after Chris and Vicky were married. 2 years into their affair, they hatched their murder plans. As the intensity of their relationship escalated, the behaviour of the secret lovers became increasingly bizarre.
They actually purchased a joint grave plot together where they would ultimately be buried. There was a particular witness that even saw them passionately kissing each other at the cemetery, so they wanted to be together for all eternity.
Then came the fantasies about murdering Chris.
On numerous occasions she said that she wanted Ari to either kill Chris or arrange to have Chris killed, and to appease Vicky, Ari would say that he would organise it. He knew hitmen, he would be able to have it done, and Ari believed that as a result of these conversations, Vicky would become aroused and it would enhance their sexual experiences.
But Vicky Soteriou was deadly serious. She wanted her husband killed and she wanted his money. Chris owned several properties and had millions in his retirement fund.
I don't know if it was her intention to have a life with Ari, but it's certainly to keep the money.
By early 2010, Vicky Soteriou had convinced Ari Dimitrakis to murder her husband. They decided to kill Chris on his 44th birthday, January 2nd. Sometime that day, Vicky met Ari in a park and gave him the murder weapon, a knife. Meanwhile, Vicky played the loving wife, giving Chris a touching birthday card.
My darling husband, Chris, wishing you all the best with everything you wish for. Thank you for loving me so much. Your wife who adores you.
Then Vicky told Chris she had something else in store, a special birthday surprise.
She said, "Get ready, we're going out." I said, "Oh, are we?" She wouldn't tell me where we're going. She wouldn't tell me who was going to be there.
The couple set off for a Greek restaurant where Vicky had organised a lavish dinner with friends. Unusually for her, she insisted on driving, parking in a secluded side street.
I said to her, "Why are you parking here?" And she said, "I always park here when I come out with the girls." come on, hurry up. We're running late.
Alpha Uziri was a regular haunt for Chris and Vicky Soteriou. And with 5 friends, they celebrated in style, eating, dancing and drinking. Although Vicky left the restaurant at one stage during the night.
She was missing for at least 20 minutes and we believe it's possible that she could have met up with Ari and plenty of time for her to get back.
At the end of the night, the revellers decide to kick on. CCTV footage shows Chris and Vicky walking back to their car, bound for a city bar. Or so Chris thought.
And I noticed a guy crouching near our car. And I asked her, is he breaking into our car? And she was very quickly to respond, no, I don't think it's our car. It's the car behind. And again, I didn't think anything of it because I was about 200 yards away. We approached the car and I'm just looking at this guy. Before I even had a chance to lift my head, I felt a cut on my throat. He slashed my throat. I tried to protect Vicky and I just yelled out, run, I love you. And then he picked up the knife and he just came on top of me and started stabbing my torso, the front, the back. Next thing I remember was a voice saying to me, Chris, stay with me, Chris. There was a doctor that was walking by with his girlfriend. He helped me. He stopped the bleeding. I think he played a major role in saving my life.
Vicky was hysterical. She was running around. She was screaming out. Later on at the hospital, she'd calmed down quite significantly. However, a doctor came out to inform Vicky that his condition had actually improved, and when she heard that information, she actually deteriorated again and became quite hysterical.
Before I even had a chance to lift my head, I felt a cut on my throat. He slashed my throat.
After a near fatal stabbing, Chris Soteriou was in an induced coma for 13 days. Vicky was constantly at his bedside.
She'd been a loving wife, visiting him every day, professing her love for him.
Finally, Chris wakes and is told by his brother that there's been a breakthrough in the investigation.
Police advised him that they're moving in closely, making an arrest. And then Vicky came about an hour later and she was just crying and rubbing my face, and I mentioned to her that the police are going to make an arrest. They're moving in closely. And I noticed she went pale in the face.
I mean, I was obviously seeing someone and it just happened.
Although police had no evidence linking Vicky with her husband's stabbing at this stage, she thought they did. And out of the blue, she confesses to detectives of her affair with Ari and also to being involved in planning the attack.
Look, I've just come here to say that Ari and I organised it, and that's all I want to say.
But Vicky's not telling the whole truth, and she subtly tries to shift the blame to Ari.
Who did the actual stabbing?
I don't know.
Was it Ari?
I honestly, I don't know. He said either he would do it or he'd get someone else to. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. He just used to come up with the ideas and I just thought, okay. And I'm sorry for it. I am.
She knew why she was there and she knew exactly what she wanted to say.
Vicky said she was involved with the crime with her lover Ari.
It's alleged that you were involved in the planning and the attempted murder of Chris Soteriou. What do you know about that?
Nothing at all.
Do you know Chris Soteriou?
I know of the name.
How do you know the name?
I know his wife, actually.
Okay, and who was his wife?
Just a lady by the name of Vicky.
Okay. And how do you know Vicky?
Just old friends from way back.
How often do you see Vicky?
Seen her for a while. We sort of stopped seeing each other for a while.
But in fact, Ari was seen outside the Soteriou's house almost daily. And Vicky was telling police the only person who didn't know about her affair with him was her unsuspecting husband, Chris.
The whole neighbourhood knew.
How did they know?
How? Well, they knew. He was there nearly every single day for like 2 months.
It's a friend of mine there.
Finally, Ari admits to the affair, but still denies having anything to do with the stabbing.
I put it to you that you were in love with Vicky Soteriou and wanted Chris Soteriou dead so you could be with her.
No.
Why are you smiling?
Because we'd actually spoken about us leaving each other's partners.
It's alleged that you and Vicky Soteriou planned to murder Chris Soteriou.
No way. I've done a lot of crazy things in my life, but no.
But police soon have the evidence to take the smile off Ari's face. Traces of Chris Soteriou's blood found in the car he was driving that night. Ari is charged with attempted murder, and initially Vicky does her best to make sure he's found guilty.
Why did you want Chris dead?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really. He kept forcing me. He just kept mentioning it, and I just thought, yeah, all right. It was basically like that.
Can you explain why?
Well, because I know it was stupid, absolutely silly, I know.
Were you in love with Ari?
I was.
Prior to
And
this?
he showed me so much love.
Eventually, Vicky does come clean, finally confessing to being behind the brutal murder plot.
I'm here to say that, okay, I am guilty of that, and you know, I did it with the Ari, and I'm sorry for it. I am.
Police now had the painful task of telling Chris Soteriou the terrible truth, exposing his wife Vicky's lies, her sordid affair, and her treacherous attempt to murder him.
I'm here to say that, okay, I am guilty of that, and you know, I did it with the Ari, and I'm sorry for it. I am.
It was a pre-planned attack. She wanted her husband dead, so it's difficult for me to believe that, you know, she was sorry. She was probably disappointed that he survived.
I tried to rip the grips off my hands. I was just gutted. I just wanted to die.
It was Dimitriakis who stabbed Chris Soteriou up to 6 times.
Eventually, Ari pleads guilty and agrees to give evidence against Vicky Soteriou. He's sentenced to 7 years jail. Now it was Vicky Soteriou's turn to face justice. Given the lurid nature of this story, Vicky Soteriou's trial was always going to be spellbinding. And it didn't disappoint. Despite her confession to police, Vicky pleaded not guilty to attempted murder, which meant all the lurid details would come out in court. There were the breathless texts from Vicky to Ari.
No other man exists in my eyes ever. Only you, Ari, my husband. I only have eyes for you, baby. I love you, Ari.
And there was the love letter Vicky sent to Ari in jail.
My love, my life, my everything, eternally yours. Marry me.
But most sleazy of all, details of their public sex.
They were in a car park at KFC and they were checked by police, and Vicky was adjusting her clothing in the back seat, so they were having sex or in some sort of passionate embrace.
Vicky Soteriou was found guilty of attempted murder and jailed for 12 years. In sentencing her, Justice Elizabeth Curtin said the crime was a gross betrayal of trust, describing Vicky as highly manipulative.
You did not wield the knife, but you intended your husband's death just as surely as if you did.
Her motive was to get all of the money, not a divorce settlement. How much money was she hoping for?
All up, it would be in the vicinity of, I would say, at least 3 to 4 million. I'd describe Vicky as extremely manipulative and heartless.
I'm pleased it's all over, and focus on the kids now, start rebuilding our lives, and yeah, we'll move on.
I think I was blind. My sisters and my friends and are just saying, my God, you're just a sucker. But I don't look at it like that. I look at it on the basis that, you know, she's my wife. Just got to give trust, and I trusted her so much.